Sarah, do you want to record there or do you want me to take
Sure,
care of
I just pressed record now.
Great. All right. Well, as we can be appreciative of all your time, we can go ahead and get started. Anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Becky Caldwell. I'm an adjunct professor over at Joliet Junior College. I work under Melissa in the Child Development Program. So I'm thrilled that you're here. I am really thrilled to be supporting you in the coaching process because when I'm not teaching at the college, that's my job. I go out and coach teachers. I think it's a very it's an investable program. We see a lot of change, and especially in the year that we've had, teachers really see the value in the coaching process. So I'm thrilled to be here. A couple of things about Zoom. If you could keep your cameras on so we can have the interaction with you. If you can't keep your cameras on, if you just want to make sure that you have available the chat that you can ask questions. And if you want to ask any questions, you want to write them in the chat, or if you just want to raise your hand, we can stop Sarah and answer any of your questions that you have. Remember the class, today's class infant tool framework. So we will be using this to help our teachers understand best practices, all the parts of the class component that Sarah Beach is going to go over. So this is Sarah Beach. She is our class affiliate trainer. So she's going to teach us all about the class tool. Now, remember, you after the short one, you won't be certified as a reliable trainer, but you'll have a good overview if you ever wanted to go be a certified trainer or a reliable assessor. It's a 2-day training. So if you have time to do that, I would suggest it, but it's 2 days. Okay.
2 long days.
Yeah.
Long days, right?
Very long days. Okay. Are there any questions before we get started? All right. All right, Melissa, got anything to add? We're good. All right.
No, I have nothing to add,
Okay.
except for I guess the other thing to add is the payment part. So I just wanted to say, to assure you all that we have the documents. Becky and I are working with the secretary to make sure that you get paid for attending this training and the next training. We can't process it obviously until after next Thursday. But thank you so much for the cumbersome paperwork procedure to be able to get your stipend.
And if there were a couple of things missing, I think I got to everyone's emails and cleaned everything that I had out. I just sent you an email that we're missing this or we're missing this one document. Again, I know it was, like Melissa said, it was tedious and a lot of work, but I think for the most part, we have everything. There's just a couple of isolated things, and I've sent emails about the ones that we're missing. Okay. All right, Miss Sarah, all yours.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. And let me know if you see my PowerPoint should come into view here.
We see it. I see it, Sarah.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to get started. So let me introduce myself really quickly. I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be able to work with you and share the class tools with you. A little bit about myself. I was a child care center director for approximately 13 years. And I wasn't introduced to the class until after my stint as a director, which was a lengthy portion, of my early career. And I sure wish I had known this tool back then, but it didn't exist until about 2007. And in 2003, I moved into the Head Start world out of the child care center environment and started working as a coach. I was a literacy coach, and then I was I was a disability coach first, and then I was a literacy coach. And then I got the opportunity around 2007 to participate as a coach in this project, in this research study that they were doing out of the University of Virginia. And they were looking for coaches, people in several different states to participate. So I signed up because I'm always looking into the next best, coolest thing. And my experience in the classroom had been, you know, working as a coach, had been that a lot of programs that were funded, that were given funding, say Head Start funding or state pre-K funding or whatever, they'd have these wonderful materials in their classrooms, but they didn't use them well. They didn't focus on the use of these wonderful materials. They more focused on, you know, they were teaching kind of in an old fashioned way with kids at tables and doing a lot of old stuff. And so I really felt like we were missing something by just having the Eckers. We used the Eckers at the time, and it focused a lot on materials and your room arrangement and all of that. But something was missing because we weren't focusing, in my opinion, on really what mattered the most, which was what do we do as teachers in the moment with these kids? How are we interacting with them? And so this, lo and behold, this tool came around, and they started the study in 2007. And this was a coaching study that I was able to get involved in. And so I worked for the University of Virginia for 3 years as a coach on this instrument. And then in 2010, they had started a company to get the class tool out in the world more. And the study was over. The coaching, they found the coaching was really successful. And so I moved over to their company, which was in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I worked as a trainer and a coach specialist part of the time, but mostly a trainer. So for about 4 or 5 years, I was a trainer on all the different versions of this tool. They have infant and toddler and pre-K and K3, all 4 of those versions I trained on. And then they also have upper elementary and high school levels. And so this is a tool for educators, and it's a tool for anyone who's working face-to-face with children in classroom settings. And so I'm just thrilled to be able to, now that I'm kind of staying put in Illinois and doing just work. I work as an independent consultant here, and haven't been traveling for quite a while, obviously. So I've been, you know, looking into opportunities like this where I can meet with people and still share this information. It's wonderful for using in your classrooms. And I encourage you as directors or as coaches, whatever your role, to learn it and to use it, because it will change the quality of your program. And so that's my little pitch about the class, just from my own experience. The class is an observation tool. It's kind of like the Eckers, if you're familiar with the Eckers. How many of you have been trained on Eckers, or you're familiar with it anyway, or you've been assessed on that? Everybody pretty much. Has anyone had a class training before or a class assessment before in your programs? Okay. So it's similar in that it's a rating scale, and it does look at quality. But it's a different kind. It's the focus that we want, which is the focus on interactions. It's not focused on, you know, how many blocks you have or how your room is set up. It's focused on the helping teachers and programs improve the effectiveness of classroom interactions. And it's research-based. It's heavily researched. So there's a good 10 years or more of research that thousands and thousands of researchers studies have used it now to validate their methods. And we know that it does measure quality. So today we're going to look at the scoring system, what the tool is, how it's, you know, formatted, how it's set up, and really go into what we're looking at when we observe through the lens of this tool, of this class. Whenever we use an observational assessment, we have to learn the tool so well that we can focus on classrooms the way the creators of the tool intended for us. So in other words, we have to take on their lens, and we have to rate the classroom based on their rating scale in order to know that our assessment is valid. And so we want to be able to have a valid and a reliable score, you know, assessment. And for use by programs, for program folks, directors, coaches, teachers, it's not so much about the score. It's really not, we're really not focusing on the score. What we're focusing on is the things that we're looking at in the tool. We're focusing on helping teachers to learn what these particular specific behaviors and interactions look like. Because when they can identify those in someone else, then we hope they can identify them in themselves, and they can say, am I doing that? How much am I doing that? Am I doing that consistently? Whatever the behavior is that's being measured by the tool, we want to encourage that reflective process in teachers so that they can ask themselves those key questions about the different behaviors in the tool. So we're going to look at all the different quote unquote dimensions of this tool. They're in each class tool, whether it's infant, toddler, pre-K, or older, we have what we call domains and dimensions. And the domains are the large categories of types of practices, and then the dimensions are more specifically focused skills. So I'm gonna define those better for you as we go along. So that's what we're gonna look at today. And our objectives are basically that you will consider this tool in relation to how it promotes infant development, what the implications are for infants' growth and development, and whether it's emotional, social, cognitive development, physical development. How do these particular dimensions that we look at and the behaviors that we're identifying, how do they promote the optimal development that we're looking for? We're going to learn what's measured under each of the 4 dimensions of the teacher, of the infant class, and then we're going to get a look at what it looks like when it's done well, and identify some specific teacher behaviors. I would love for you to be able to, if you have a piece of paper or a notebook where you can jot some notes, I would love for you to be able to look at the definitions of the dimension that we're talking about, and then see if you can identify those behaviors when you do an observation of the teacher or when you watch a video. Okay, so I'll help you to learn the different interactions and the different teacher behaviors that we're focusing on, and then we'll watch videos and see if you can identify those. And ultimately, the last one, understand how the tool is used. And so, excuse me, I just wanted to mention that the tool is used in many different ways. For our purposes with this grant, I think we really want to focus on using it in a way that is supportive to teachers and helps teachers to focus on the right things in their practice, because we all want our teachers to be intentional, right? We want them to be intentional in their practices. And that's the beauty of this kind of a tool, because it kind of gives you a framework. It gives you a list of all the things that you would need to do if you're a teacher in order to be highly intentional. And like I said, it's been shown to be correlated with the best outcomes for our kids. So they only included behaviors and interactions in this tool that were found in research to really make a difference for kids. So they measured both teacher and children outcomes. So let's talk about what the tool measures. And I do want you to feel free to interrupt me. I'm going to talk fast because we only have 2 hours, and this overview can be done. It's often done in a 6-hour training. So we're really going fast to give you the biggest overview and the most important facts about this tool. But I want you to feel free to either raise your hand or just jump in, whatever you need to do. Put something in the chat box if you want to ask a question or if you need clarification on anything, okay? And sometimes I need to be interrupted if I just I go so fast. So what does the tool measure? What does the tool look at? And why do we have these measurement tools? Well, these are the kinds of things that have been shown in research to matter for children's outcomes. We know that structural features of classrooms matter, such as what materials you have. Do you have good professional development? Do you have good levels of staff training and education? Do you have a curriculum? Are you using it, et cetera? What standards are you addressing? The who, the what, and the where, those are all structural features of quality. And there's a lot of research that shows those things matter. And then we have process features, things that are a little bit harder to assess, things that are more less tangible, like how do we implement the curriculum? If we have a curriculum, let's say we're using creative curriculum throughout the center, but one teacher is using it really well to fidelity and they're following and using all the parts of it as they're intended. And another teacher is just kind of using it as, you know, some ideas, but they're kind of going their own way when they do the curriculum, when they plan. So one teacher is implementing it with fidelity and one teacher is not. We cannot guarantee the learning, you know, unless we're implementing things with a high level of fidelity. And the same thing goes with interactions. They're hard to measure because, you know, interactions are almost subjective sometimes. You know, you can say to a child, let's not put our hands on the other baby, you know, let's take our hands off. Or we can say, let's not put our hands on that baby. Let's take our hands off. You know, you can say it in different ways. You can read a story in different ways. You know, you can read a story in a very interactive way where the child is looking and you're looking at the child and you're using, you know, motherese or parentese kinds of inflections. Or you can read a story kind of in a rote, boring way. Yeah, there's a bear. Yep, let's turn the page, you know, and make it very not that engaging. And so it's how we implement things that really, you know, matters. And so all of these things matter for children's outcomes, but what we know now is that the process features of quality, like the relationships and the interactions, everything flows through those, right? Curriculum, standards, everything depends on those process features. And so we don't get the outcomes we want unless we have these process features really down and they're high quality. In fact, you may have seen different programs where they have great environment and great materials, but they don't have great interactions and relationships. Or you may see a program that's very, you know, poorly funded, that has very, you know, crappy materials and their books are old and they don't have enough toys to go around, but they love on those babies. They love those kids and the kids are happy. So it's really focusing on, you know, what really matters, which is those relationships and interactions. So is everybody following that to start with? We all know that what's most important there, right? So
Sarah, if I can interrupt you, I'm sorry for a minute.
Sure.
Now they have their infant manuals.
Okay.
So on page 2, if they wanted to reference they've all been given the class manuals.
Great. Yeah, have that in front of you. You might have a dimensions guide as well.
They have the
manuals.
Guide.
These are
they
very.
also have the toddler scoring tool. We don't have the infant scoring tool yet, but they're going to get that. So they have that too. So if you wanted to reference.
So what do they have today? The class manual?
Yep, and the dimensions guide. And they have the toddler. Yep, Melissa's showing it there.
Awesome.
And they have a toddler scoring sheet.
Okay. Wonderful. So, you know, these are really expensive, by the way. So you are very fortunate to have participated in this grant. And it's like, it's almost like a Bible.
We don't have the infant scoring sheet. Is that something that will?
Right. You will be getting it. We only give you the toddler scoring sheet. We had to
We don't have the toddler one either.
And just so you know, I'm not teaching you how to score this tool so much as I'm teaching you how to understand it. Okay. Yeah.
Melissa's showing you.
The
You have that?
sheets.
Okay, we'll get you one.
Yeah. And you're not going to be, you're not going to know how to score this tool thoroughly. You'll get an idea of how it is scored and what constitutes a higher score versus a lower score. But I don't want you to get too hung up on numbers because you won't be accurate until you really get trained to reliability. And so the interesting thing is, you don't have to be necessarily a reliable coder, or you don't necessarily have to be highly trained as a coder in order to dig into this tool and understand the concepts and be able to coach teachers. When we were coaching in the project that I was involved with, the original that the authors of the class were doing back in late 2000s, we didn't even code the teachers that we worked with. We simply, they had other assessors who would go into the classrooms and do the coding and collect scores to see how people were improving. But the work we did was focused on just understanding the tool and digging into it and focusing on their teacher practices in the moment. So,
I think I've said I give Sarah a minute to breathe here. So she, you'll start to look at it with a class lens. Like I walk into a classroom and I have to really think, okay, where am I at? Am I looking at it in an Akers lens or am I looking in a class lens? But you still will start to learn what you're looking for, even though you won't be reliable yet unless you want to go to the 2-day training. You do get a lens for it. You get a feel for the tool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you start focusing on the things that matter for this particular tool. And so creating a shared lens, that's what this is all about. The class tool provides a common language and a shared lens for teachers, coaches, observers. So if you talk about relationships or relational climate in a classroom, and the administrator talks about that, or the teacher talks about that you're all talking about the same things. You are talking about specific behaviors that go with that term. And so the tool, I'm just going to go quickly now, that it captures the complexity of classrooms. We know classrooms are extremely complex because relationships are complex and interactions are complex. Sometimes they're subtle. Sometimes there's behavior that is unspoken behavior. Sometimes there's, there is body language and there's tone of voice, and all those things go into relationships and interactions. And so it is complex, but believe it or not, we can measure these things to within a 1 point accuracy. And the tool is based on 7 points from 1 through 7. And the researchers have it down. So where if you use the lens and you score it in the way they train you to score it, you can be accurate within 1 point every time. And so it views and measures effective interactions. It aligns measurement of those interactions with the professional development. So that's what we're doing when we're coaching, is professional development. And we all know now that one-off trainings don't do much for teacher practice. That one-off trainings are, they're worth getting some information to teachers, but they don't change practices. And so whenever you send a teacher to a training, you have to remember that they need that followed up with some coaching or some meeting together to dialogue in PLC's, professional learning communities, or some sort of peer-to-peer discussion so that they can digest the information they've been given and make use of it in an intentional way. But just sending them to a training really does not do very much for impacting the quality, to change things, to make things better. So we really want to take what we learned from the tool, take what we learned from our observations of teachers, and then use it to decide what professional development do we need. There are 4 dimensions in this tool, which I'm going to get to, and you can pin down, across our staff, how are we doing in these 4 dimensions of infant interactions, and really focus everybody on where you need them to focus for their learning. So we know that effective interactions early on are what set the stage for the rest of kids' lives, right? Everybody knows that. And they've got lots of data to support this, that when we give kids the right things early on, they do well. It sets the trajectory of their learning for many years. All the way up to third grade, they see impact of high scores or highly effective interactions early in 0 to 3 programs and in pre-K programs, leading to better learning outcomes in math, language arts, and social emotional behaviors as late as 3rd grade. And everybody in the education field, the K-12 world, will tell you that if you've got things solid at age 3rd grade, at age 8, that is setting a trajectory for their learning through high school and college. That by 3rd grade, kids need to know how to read, and by 3rd grade, kids need to have certain math and study skills, etc. And so, anyway, we're setting the stage so that can be there. I mentioned all these different levels. Each one has a different set of behaviors, because what we do with kids at different ages is different, right? And if teachers ask, why are we doing this? Why are we focusing on this? Why are we, putting so much emphasis on all this? This is a really good reason. There is a huge achievement gap in the country that's been there for a long time. It's based on inequities that have been in our systems for, going back hundreds of years. There are differences between the learning and development of at-risk kids and more advantaged children. Children living in poverty situations, children living without the opportunities for good programming, children who are living, with all kinds of poverty-related factors are much less likely to succeed in school. And we know as early as 8 months now, we can see those differences. I'm sorry, 9 months. As early as 9 months, they can see differences in children's language growth and developmental growth. And so the gap gets wider the older they get. And so we want to address these things early. So let's talk about what we are going to address. We want to know what things are we supposed to address early. What do kids need a lot of in order to close that gap or prevent it from getting wider? Let me move the slide on to the next one. And this is, I'm sure, a review for all of you. It's just focusing on the influence of development, the things that impact development, because this tool, especially, for the infant level, it has to be based on what kids need developmentally, right? Everything in the tool is focused on some part of their development, and how are we maximizing that? How are we maximizing children's growth and progress? And so we know that temperament and physical characteristics that are inborn have a lot to do with how kids grow and develop. And every child has a different personality that much of which is temperamental and genetically influenced. Their physical characteristics are based on a lot of things, but part of it is genetics and what they're born with. Then we know that home and family is critically, consequential for infant development. That's such a huge thing, right? And because kids are in childcare for so many hours at this age, we also know that equally as important are the experiences they have with us. In fact, they're with us more hours of the day in most cases for infants and toddlers than they are at home with their waking hours. So those experiences that they have, I think all 3 of these things are about equally important, but none of them can be taken, lightly. We have control over the experiences that children have while they're in our care. And to some degree, we have some influence on their home and family at this age, because parents are very dependent on us, and they look up to us for guidance. And so we can influence kids' development, we've got the most power of all, I think, to influence their outcomes. It's a heavy lift, and it's a huge responsibility, obviously. This is an important thing that you can't hear enough. I'm sure you heard this many, many times. Let's just center ourselves on this truth that relationships lay the foundation for every aspect of a child's development. So when we think about a child's development, especially at this young of an age, there's nothing developmentally that doesn't depend upon us, right? That doesn't depend upon the teacher caregiver and the parent relationships. When you see some of the videos that I'm going to play for you as we go through today, the rest of today, you'll see some different levels of connection between, we're talking about connection, right? Between babies and teachers, babies and caregivers. And you're going to see some differences in the ways teachers connect with babies. And, you don't have to be a bubbly person to be positive with babies. You just have to be a positive person. You just have to approach them with a smile. And there's different personalities. We all have different personalities. And so, but the focus on the connection that we make with every infant and every toddler cannot be estimated or under mentioned to teachers. So I talk about it a lot with teachers early in the year, especially as they were first getting to know children. But then obviously, whenever there are problems and whenever there are stresses, we go back to the relationship, and we talk about, what am I doing as the key person in this child's existence right now, in the moment? What am I doing to use my relationship to help them? And so the information that I'm going to share with you is, most of this was collected from sources like NAEYC. Developmentally appropriate practices comes from NAEYC. And we're just going to review quickly the basic areas of the infant's, of the baby's development that this tool is based on. Okay, because I mentioned earlier that at this level of the game, at the infant level, more so than any other level, we have to focus on where they're at developmentally, because there's so much variation from child to child, right? You can have, my daughter was 18 months before she started walking, my younger daughter, and my first daughter walked at 10 months. And so luckily the 18 months was the end of the window of quote unquote typical development. But she was a very slow walker. And so there's a lot of variation, which we need to know what those norms are, right? When it's typical development and when it's not. And so let's focus a little bit on how the CLASS instrument defines infant, first of all, and then what they look at developmentally. So they do define infant as birth to 18 months old, technically. However, the tool itself is only used for measuring classrooms birth to 15 months. So if you have children older than 15 months, you would use the toddler instrument to assess those classrooms. It's more appropriate. But what we know about babies is that they have very rapid development. They're dependent on adults for everything, for every aspect of their development, right? They won't develop. We know from seeing babies in orphanages in Romania that they will not develop if they don't have adults meeting their needs. And so that's what this tool is all about. And that's what's so beautiful about it, is we know that when we use this tool and we apply it, we're doing all of the right things for baby's development. Babies at this age have difficulty regulating emotions. They can't regulate their own emotional states, right? They don't typically know how to self-soothe. They're learning gradually through experience how to find their thumb, or how to roll over, or how to rock themselves. But they really depend on the adult for the most part to get their regulation, to get their needs met and be calmed, right? And so that's what adults are for, is to calm the child, to do the regulating for the child, so that they can gradually learn how to calm themselves. When we talk about toddlers having temper tantrums and preschoolers throwing themselves on the floor having tantrums, that's they become dysregulated. But from early on, we are giving them, through everyday experiences, more and more practice with pulling it together and coping with things, coping with stress. But at this age, we have to do it for them. They get upset, they're not going to calm down unless we intervene. Okay, so the nurturing caregiving is what sets the stage for their ability to self-regulate, which is why we know the more you hold a baby, the more solid they are becoming as psychologically and emotionally. We are not harming them by holding them a lot. And the more they cry it out, the more they're left to cry, the more difficulty they have in developing the ability to self-soothe eventually. So the most secure babies are the ones who get a lot of holding and a lot of nurturing, right? Attachment, we know, develops over time. The beauty of childcare is that we now know that secure attachment can be facilitated by really good caregivers. It's not only dependent on parents, and that babies do become attached to many different people. They can be attached to several different people. And it's the totality of those attachments that really matters. By 6 months of age, it says most infants have developed specific attachments. So you will see the relationships, hopefully, between a teacher and a child, a baby, grow from day one and to where they get in sync, right? That's what we're looking for. They get in sync. And when you walk into a classroom, it's a beautiful thing when you have a teacher who is aware and in sync with the different babies in her care. What, just out of curiosity, and you can put it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself, what do you look for as a trainer or a coach or a administrator? What do you look for when you walk into a classroom and you're focusing on the attachment or the social emotional needs of that child, of those babies? What kinds of things are you looking for? I know you weren't expecting me to throw it back to you, Rhett, because I've been talking all this whole time. Anybody care to share what kinds of things you've got the lens of what good care looks like. What do you want to see?
I think Sandifer has something to say, but you got to unmute so we can hear you. Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sorry. What I look for when I walk in my infant toddler room is how the relationship that the child and the teacher have.
And what does it look like?
How does that child, well, at my facility, Miss Anna's been my infant room teacher for about 13 years, and those babies love her. It's like if someone else walks in the room other than Miss Anna or the staff that works in that room, the babies run to her and cling to and hold on to her legs. Mm-hmm. It's like she has such a wonderful relationship with the infants. I love it. Yeah, so I think she spoiled them a little too much, because it's like sometimes they don't want to go home with the mom.
Yeah. It's a good sign, though. We need to tell our moms that that's a good sign, right?
That's a very good sign. So,
yeah.
She's very nurturing to the infants and toddlers. And most of the time they stay with us from beginning they start as early as 6 weeks and they stay until they're 5, 6 years old and go to school.
Awesome. Talk about solid. I mean, that's huge. That's their life we're talking about, you know,
Yes.
lifelong. It makes me just about cry when I think about it. And I think about what kids need and then what they get, you know? And
Sarah,
anybody else
Miss-
want to jump
Yeah,
in?
Ms. Simchak typed in the box, the chat box, if she sees the eye contact in this picture with both the teacher and the child, that they're disconnected.
Nice. And what else do you see on their faces?
How about they're
Yeah.
happy?
Yeah, the smile, the match, it's called
Affect.
match affect, right? Matching of their affect, their emotional tone. And you just see that right between the two of them, they're connected. That's what we're looking for. And obviously, in order to do that, you do have to be down at their level, you know, a good portion of the time. So you want to see proximity, you want to see closeness, you want to see both physical and, you know, verbal affection being communicated. And anybody else wanted to join and jump in, say anything? I don't want to cut anybody off.
I have an example of when we go into our infant room, what I'm looking for. I'm
Great.
looking for children who are willing to try new experiences. When children are comfortable and trust the teachers and trust the environment, they're more willing to venture out and try new things. Crawling, exploring new toys. If they're uncomfortable, they're constantly keeping their eyes on the teachers and they don't venture off often.
Awesome. That's wonderful. So they're very comfortable and secure. They're using the teacher as a secure base. That's something we can observe, right? That is something you can notice. What do they do? Just like Sandifer said, what do they do when a stranger comes in?
And
What
when
do they
children
do?
are comfortable, then they kind of look at the teacher like, look what I did, and make that eye contact. because they-
Exactly. Yeah. So they're seeking approval from
The
the teacher.
affirmation part of it, right?
And
Excellent.
they also willing to try things. So when a teacher
Yep.
introduce something, they willing to try because they are secure, they are comfortable, and they safe.
And they know the teacher won't do
Won't
anything to
do-
harm them.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And it goes without saying, you know, you don't even have to really say this, but I will mention it because in plenty of classrooms, we don't see happy children, or we see babies that are very flat, and either they're crying or they have a flat affect. And so we do want to see expressions of happiness and joy and playfulness and comfort, like you all said, you know. You can observe, these are all observable things. And that's why this tool is an observation tool. It's something that, like Becky said, you develop a lens for knowing what to look for. And you look for these key things, and then ultimately you can determine, are they doing this consistently? Are they doing this at a high level? Are they doing it regularly? Are they doing it with all the babies or just some, you know? And so that's ultimately how the tool is scored. It's a lot of judgments that are made, but they're objective judgments. They're based on true observations.
Sarah, Kathy added that she likes to see when teachers are interacting with the children, showing expression and emotion while interacting with them.
Nice.
Added that into the chat.
Yes. So you see that expression and happiness both ways. And that includes smiling and eye contact and laughter and playfulness and echoing what the baby says, and right, and being attuned. We're gonna divide all of those behaviors and put them into some different categories. This tool will do that. I mentioned earlier that it's set up in dimensions. And so most of the things we were just talking about were relationship behaviors, but some of them were specific to attunement and sensitivity, and being sensitive to the baby's cues. So where do those cues come from? Well, they come from things like this, the temperament, right? They come from the baby's mood and the baby's, how the baby is feeling right now. But the importance of temperament, we don't want to minimize, because all babies have different temperaments or different personalities and emotional behavioral influences. These different words here, flexible, fearful, and feisty, describe sort of three different types. The researchers names Thomas and Chess. They studied different infants and they identified 9 different temperamental traits, like the activity level of the child, the distractibility, the intensity of the child, how sensitive they are. Do they fall apart real easily, or can they, you know, are they a little bit more bold? And how do they approach people or situations? Approach withdrawal is one of the other traits. Quality of mood, they look at persistence. So all these different temperamental traits, they kind of use to create these types. And so they kind of place babies in one of these types. And this is just one model. There's different models for temperament, but this is probably the most famous way of looking at temperaments: flexible, feisty, or fearful. So you kind of can get an idea of how a baby will approach different situations. And 40% of kids fall into this category of flexible, they say. Usually they're quote unquote the easier babies. They're easy to, you know, get to know. They're easy to interact with. They typically have regular biological functions. You know, they go to sleep at the same time regularly. They eat. Everything's pretty regular for them. Good sleeping habits, etc. And they're generally cheerful. The fearful type is about 15% of kids, and those are also considered slow to warm up kids. So they might, you know, hang back more, and they're more shy, or it takes them a little bit more time to warm up to you, but they do. And they might express a little bit more negative mood more quickly. And they might have more irregularities with sleep and with eating. And so you have to know that about the kids. You know, is it just a child who is a little bit less regulated? And that could just be part of their constitution, who they are. And then the feisty kids are thought to be around 10% of kids. Those can sometimes also be known as the difficult kids. They're sort of the opposite of flexible. These are the ones that are often hard to get to sleep, hard to get to take the bottle, or feeding can be more difficult. Their nap might change from day to day. Sometimes they nap, sometimes they just refuse. They might be crying more or fussy, and their reactions are just more intense. So again, these are all fairly biologically determined, and they do have an impact on the behaviors that we see. And so we have to have teachers who can adjust, right? We have to have teachers that know these kids so well that they know how to adjust their minute to minute or moment to moment interactions in a way that meets that child's in the moment, meet that child's needs in the moment. So think about how these questions: how might temperament impact teachers' attachment to them? You know, you think about your teachers and how they get attached to babies, and vice versa. Which ones are the ones that are most easy to get attached to? And which ones are the most difficult? You know, especially for younger, less experienced teachers, I think it's quite common to be drawn to those easy babies, those cheerful all the time babies, and to get really attached to them, right? To love playing with them. But some younger, again, I see this more in less experienced teachers. They struggle with the more feisty babies, and it takes quite an experienced teacher to know just what that child needs and to be able to meet its needs quickly. Like Sandifer was saying, her teacher in her infant room has been doing it for years and years and years, and she's got it down. You know, it's wonderful to see, isn't it? It's wonderful. Another question might be to think about is, how would a caregiver who has herself or himself a somewhat feisty personality or temperament, how might they interact or react to a child with a different temperament? You know, is there a good fit, or is there a clash? We have to consider that with our teachers. We've got feisty, fearful, and flexible teachers, just as we do babies, you know? And so it's something to talk about, you know? Anybody have any comments or thoughts on that? Or anything you wanted to add? Feel free to type it in the chat box or.
Just say something real quick, Sarah, because I have to
Absolutely.
jump off in a minute to get to my department meeting. But as you're talking about these things, I am, as many of you probably are, you're imagining children, and I'm imagining the two people that I have in my life that are my sons, and, one's 16 and one's 21. But I remember when my son, who's now 21, was in his family childcare home, he never slept. He was 6 months old. He barely ever wanted to take a bottle. He slept 6 months. 6 months, he slept like 30 minutes in childcare. And it really is, as you're saying, this match and the impression of the caregiver and of the teacher as to whether she is feeling successful, or if she's able to maybe distance herself and say, this is this child's temperament, and it's not a reflection on me as the type of teacher I am, that I'm not going to be able to make this child something that they're not. And that, again, it takes experience to be able to say, how can we meet each child's individual needs where they're at, and not only be looking at those children that are the most flexible, because it makes us feel more successful.
Good point. Yeah, excellent point. And it also makes us feel less stressed. And right. I speaking as someone who was a caregiver, an infant caregiver, that was my first job ever, was as an infant caregiver. And I just remember, I'm sure you all can relate to, you want your break. You want a little break every day, and you would love for everybody to sleep at the same time. Or you don't want that one kid who's not going to sleep. It's like, come on, we need a break. And so as an administrator, I think you can do a lot to make sure that your teachers do get some breaks, even if their kids don't all sleep. And we could talk about nap till the cows come home, right? About what we expect of kids and what we do with kids with nap time. But it's all about recognizing their needs and meeting their needs. And you might have a kid who doesn't nap who's still cranky, right? They don't nap, but yet they're cranky and acting like they need a nap. And so like Melissa said, we don't want it to be interpreted as what am I doing wrong? Why am I not able to get this kid calm? It's really, I think it's really important thing to talk about with teachers. So the goodness of fit, let's keep that in mind as we go along into these class dimensions. The goodness of fit, that's a term, it's a psychological term, a developmental term. We're looking for a goodness of fit, so that you don't have to fit with every single baby you care for. There might be some that you don't know what to do, but somebody in that child's caregiving life has to be a good fit. They have to have a good fit. And so that's why we have groupings, that's why we have 3 teachers in a room, or at least 2. And so that we can tag team and somebody can connect with the child when they need it in the ways that they need it. So moving from the temperament and the personality behavioral stuff to learning, we also want to focus on how babies are managing the information that's coming at them. How are they perceiving things? How are they using their senses to learn about the world? And what are we doing as teachers to make sure that they have every opportunity to maximize their learning? They talk about that babies need contingent responding, which is, just a fancy way of saying they need us to respond to them. They need us to watch for their cues and then respond in the appropriate way. And so if they're given the cue, if they're giving a cue to us that says, pick me up, and we don't pick them up, there's a mismatch. Or if they're given a cue that they don't want the bottle, but we're forcing it on them because we got to get this baby fed in our timetable, that's a miscue. And so what we're looking for is a response that's contingent on what the baby is giving us. And for learning, they give us all kinds of cues about what they're interested in, right? And what they want to do. Do you want to grab this? Oh, do you want to shake this? Oh, you're trying to get to the shelf so you can pull up. Okay, let me help you, So we're watching for what they want and then following their lead. And we all know that babies learn through their senses. It's the sensory motor period. And so that means giving them opportunities to move, giving them opportunities to explore, and also supporting whatever they're learning through their environment. I think I mentioned all three of the things on here. When a teacher gives joint attention, infants learn through joint attention. When the teacher follows the infant's gaze, so they're both looking and engaging with the same object. For example, if an infant points at the ball, the teacher looks at the ball too. And she says, yeah, you see that ball. That's a big red ball, isn't it? And that's how they take in information. The word ball is associated with what I'm looking at because we're both looking at it. And over multiple hundreds of times, they learn the word ball, right? And they learn the word red. And so joint attention is what helps infants begin to understand that objects in the environment exist in their own right, that there's names for these things and there's categories for different kinds of things. And that understanding is really a precursor to language development and greater knowledge development about the world and about their environment. So it's the consistent high quality relationships with adults that give that contingent responding and that joint attention. In other words, relationships quite literally impact their brain development, baby's brain development, and the learning that can happen. They get so much from that.
Sarah,
Yes.
we're 1 hour in.
All
I know
right.
I'm your timekeeper here. So
Thank you. Okay.
1 hour.
The last hour, when we're almost getting into the dimensions now, I have gone through a lot of the developmental stuff. I want to play a quick video for you just to keep you engaged and also really focus everyone in on the importance of cue detection, because so much of this tool is based on, because learning and emotional development and social development all depends on the adult, right? What does the adult do for that baby? What does the adult move the baby? Do they bring the baby toys? Do they talk to the baby? Do they give that joint attention when the baby is looking at something? Do they respond sensitively if the baby cries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What that all depends on is having teachers who can hone in on the cues that the babies are giving off about what they're feeling and what they want and what they're interested in and what their needs might be. And so I'm going to show a quick video, and I'm starting this video in several minutes into the video, and it'll take a minute to load up here. But first I'm going to play it with no sound, and then I'm going to play it again with sound, because you might see different cues. You might be able to, I want you to focus in on what the cues are that the baby is giving off, and also what the cues are that the teacher is seeing and what cues the teacher might be missing. And so let me make sure this is silenced. Okay, do you see the video playing? All right, so I'm gonna fast forward it to a certain time. This is a teacher, a male caregiver who has 3 babies in his care right now. And there's two girl babies that are sitting on the floor. And then the baby that he had in his arms, he just placed in the crib. And then he goes to wash his hands. And of course, he has to keep his eye on these two. And the one that he put in the crib doesn't go to sleep right away. He's not real happy about being in the crib. But anyway, he goes to wash his hands. And then you see a lady off to the side here. This is a mom who just came in the door. And she is getting ready to drop her child off. And what we're going to see is while he's washing his hands, the mom is getting her child ready to leave. And she's deciding, is this a good place to put my baby down? And he's talking to the mom a little bit. All the while, these babies are on the floor playing and interacting. So let's watch for babies' cues and watch for the attention of the male caregiver. The mom, you don't have to focus on the mom so much because she's not a caregiver. She's just signing her baby in and then putting her down. So I'm going to start at about 140. I'm going to move it up to 140 when he just gets done washing his hands. Let's watch what happens. And I want to see if you see these cues, baby cues. Okay. How do they give off indications of what they might need, how they might feel, problems? Things that are going to impact what he does. And how attentive is he to their cues? So far, he's missing some things, right? You're missing a lot so far. Okay, but we're going to see him turn around when he's done talking to the mom. Let's see. I wanted to make sure I started at, I was trying to start it at 2.40. All right. So the male caregiver just went to hang the chart up or something, put that away. Now he's going to come back and look for cues. Mommy's going to lay the other baby down. And we're hoping he comes back to attend to the two on the floor, right? Oh, he noticed. What does he do? You're looking for what does he do and is he effective? Are his interactions or his attempts effective? Do you see that? Uh-oh, the baby in the other crib is crying. I'm gonna go tend to that one. Now watch these other two on the floor for one more second here. Okay. All right, now I'm going to play it again with the sound on, and start at 240 again. Okay. He did lay the baby down, then he went to wash his hands, and the baby that he laid down never did settle down in the crib. Okay.
Oh, let's see what I can find you, Matthew. There you go. You want to turn it off? Look how fun. I found a turtle. I found our bell. Here, you want the bell, Remy? There you go. There you go, Matthew. Are you have the phone back? Who's gonna call, huh? Get Mr. King here tucked in. There we go, dear. Come on here, Matthew. Matthew. Y'all bundled in. Well, have a nice day. We'll see you later this afternoon.
Okay. So I can only take so much crying myself. I don't know about you, but what did you see there in terms of child behaviors that were bids for attention or cues
The
that
little
they,
girl in the pink shirt did not want anybody in her personal bubble.
she did not. She
How
did
old is
not.
that video?
Oh, I'm guessing this video is probably about, what year is it? It's 2021. It's probably at least 6 years old now, 7 years old.
As soon as I saw the blanket in the child's crib, that's all I could focus on.
Yeah. I'm like,
I was like, oh my God.
Oh, right. We don't do that anymore. I know.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's the thing about putting on the class lens is we can get distracted by things like that. And actually we it's real easy to get distracted by things that are misplaced in the room or dangerous or whatever. But we want to keep our focus on the interactions, and it gets difficult to remain really objective when you go into a classroom. But as far as the baby's cues, they were giving off all kinds of signals, right?
they were, but my concern was I didn't see him trying to engage with them. I didn't see him trying to redirect them or make them happy. He could have redirected them where the tears could have been laughing by him just making silly faces or singing a song. I
Mhm,
didn't see any interaction with him or no verbal commands.
mhm,
Or yeah,
mhm.
even when the child was crying, he put that baby in the crib and let it cry, and then the other
Yeah.
ones were just kind of left alone.
There was no attention.
And even
Right.
when he went to go hand that baby the phone, she pushed it away, like, get out of my space.
And even when the baby was crying, he didn't try to console her or him to, to let them know that you are in a safe environment. Touch
Exactly.
is important in the infant classroom.
Mhm.
I could have said their names. He could have sang a song. There is nothing.
Exactly. And so
Every time I see that video, I think, why didn't he go and position himself on the floor next to those other children? Why did he sit in the chair instead of sitting on the floor with that baby and getting that close bond and monitoring what's going on? Because one of them, of course, we saw got hurt and she grabbed her face, and
yeah,
that's why she was crying.
Yeah.
So I always wonder, why did you
it's a
choose the
difficult video to watch.
Yeah.
And teachers, have different levels, as you know, of sensitivity and awareness, right? Different teachers have different levels of awareness. And so the tool for the dimension of teacher sensitivity, which is its own dimension, looks at things like how aware is the teacher of the baby's cues and the baby's, emotions and needs, and how attentive are they? So how responsive are they? And he was kind of neither. He was somewhat aware sometimes. In fact, I'm just going to read you from the description that they provide with this video. It says, the teacher is inattentive to many infants in the classroom, and the infants have to wait a long time for the teacher to attend to them when they make nonverbal or verbal bids for attention. He rarely attends to the infants on the floor, like you said. He has his body oriented away from the infants most of the time while performing the managerial tasks in the classroom, right? So a sensitive teacher would be washing their hands and talking to a baby, right? Washing their hands and watching the babies to make sure they're fine. He seems unaware of the infant on the floor attempting to bite the other infant. And there's, sometimes when he does visually scan the room, which we give him credit for in this tool, we say, okay, he is looking, he is somewhat, but he's not highly attentive and not highly responsive. And that video is a good one just for showing, how many cues babies give off, and how quickly we need to attend. With this tool, if there's any amount of crying in the classroom, we look at the the sensitivity, because even with a baby that's very cranky or very feisty or, you know, fearful, as they say, who cries a lot, we still need to see immediate responses from the teacher as well as the awareness, right? And so that's where the teacher who's been in the classroom for 13 years has it together, and she's going around like crazy meeting everybody's needs, but there's not a lot of crying happening. So let's move quickly. I want to get to the dimensions now. We have about 45 minutes left. So we're going to go through the dimensions. I mentioned the different ages, we look at birth to 9 months, and then older babies. We see both in these videos, and we're looking at all ages from birth all the way through 15 months. So you see some mobile infants and you see some, you know, very non-mobile infants with this tool. So the overview, the way the class is laid out is that we have one broad domain called teacher-child interactions, responsive caregiving. And there's only one domain in this infant level, whereas the other tools have 2 or 3 different domains that we look at. But with infants, it's all about being responsive. So that makes it somewhat simple. When we're talking about responsive caregiving, we're talking about the relational climate that we set for them. We're talking about teacher sensitivity. There's a dimension called facilitated exploration, which is the learning dimension. It's how do teachers help children explore and learn. And then we're talking about what do teachers do to support language. And we're going to meet together, all of us, in a week to go over toddler as well, right? Is that correct? You're all going to be back in a week? Great, because some of the dimensions are the same in the toddler level, so we'll have a chance to go even more depth on what we mean. But let's talk about the relational climate dimension. Okay, I mentioned that within this big domain of responsive caregiving, we have a dimension called relational climate. So that's relationships. It's about what behaviors tell us that there's a relationship between these caregivers and babies. And I can see people are it's 1:45. So some people are being interrupted and called away briefly, but hopefully they'll be able to come back with us. I know it's a busy time at your centers. You never know what's going to happen. But let's talk about the relational behaviors that we want to see. The kinds of behaviors, you already mentioned them early: proximity, sitting on the floor with them or being in proximity, holding them close, eye contact, paying attention joint attention, and affection. Those are the 4 basic behaviors we're talking about. And so you will be looking at these relational behaviors and saying, is there a strong relationship, or is there kind of a relationship, or is there not much of a relationship? You know, you've got high, you've got mid, you've got low levels of these things.
Sarah, somebody sent me a message asking how this is different with the state of COVID.
The only difference is that there are not observers, you know, reliable observers going out into classrooms right now doing these assessments.
I think they're in relation to the tool, like what,
yeah,
you know, because of the relationships and sitting close and children being close, they can't measure that.
Well, with babies, they still are getting a lot of close contact and a close attention. We're not socially distancing. We're not able to social distance with babies. And so obviously the teachers are wearing a mask, and you're probably washing hands more often, and you're probably changing your gown or changing your scrubs if you get slimed on or whatever. But you're still doing these same things. And, you know, nobody's real, they haven't changed the tool any, in other words. It's a good question though, because if they were doing actual observations, you know, scores might be lower, hypothetically, you know, especially in the pre-K classrooms where there's no physical touch and there's no hugs going on and all that stuff. So it's a good question. But basically, we're not going to make any changes to this based on the existence of COVID, and we're going to still look for the same kinds of things. And then there's always the, of course, you have to be safe kind of caveat that you have to add. So other than relational behaviors, I mentioned these four. These are the basic behaviors. The term relational behaviors, that's what we call an indicator. It's an indicator of the dimension. And then these are behavioral markers, the behaviors, the actual things we can observe. And so indicators indicate what makes up the dimension, and they represent the behaviors that you see in classroom interactions. And then behavioral markers fit within the specific indicators. So we talked about all of those. In the responsive caregiving domain, we have these four different dimensions: relational climate, teacher sensitivity, exploration, and early language support. And overall, that dimension of relational climate is looking at the connections, the emotions, and the respect conveyed by teachers, as well as the infant's responses. Because as you guys said earlier, when children are very well connected and trusting of their caregiver, attached, in other words, they're going to be wanting to be close. They're going to seek proximity to that teacher. And so the baby's responses are also looked at in this lens. So let me give you a video example of a good relational climate. And this first one is called Warmth and Respect. If you look at your actual manual, there's a page that lays out all the relational climate indicators, right? Everything that you would look for is on that one page. That's on page 18, and that's called the face page for that dimension. So relational climate reflects the connections, emotions, and respect conveyed by teachers, as well as the infant responses to these interactions. So the first video I want to play is called Warmth and Respect at the Changing Table. And you will see that respect for infant state is the third indicator. It's the third indicator there, right? Respect for the infant state. So you're going to look for these behaviors when you watch the video. You're looking for a calm voice, gentle approach, communicating the transitions or anything she's going to do to the baby or with the baby. She communicates it first. I'm going to wash your hands. I'm going to change your diaper, right? That she's respectful to the infant, and she uses respectful language. Okay. So let's see which of those behaviors show up in this video. Okay. Let's start at the beginning here. It's about 1.5 minutes.
Wash your hands, okay? Wash your hands. Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
And Kathy's gonna wash her hands. I'm gonna scoot you over a little bit. I'm gonna wash my hands, okay? Good morning. All right. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I see that smile. I see that. Yeah. Kathy sees that. I'm gonna do your exercises over here. All right. Do those and get them out of the way. Yeah. Let's do your exercises. Let's do your exercises. Oh, can I can see that? Oh, look at you. Look at you. Yeah. Can you look at me over here? All right. All tell me some stuff. Yeah, can you talk to me? You're doing so good. Holding your head up. You're so big. So big. Making so big. Hi, Ethan.
All right. So of those behaviors, what did you see? If you look at the dimension, the face page on page 18, which behaviors did you see her demonstrate there, especially under respect? You can call them out. Did she have a calm voice? Absolutely, right? You can give a thumbs up if you don't want to call it out. Did she use a gentle approach?
Yes, she.
Absolutely. Was she communicating her intentions and what she was doing to the baby or with the baby? Communicating what she was doing while she was doing it? And using respectful language. If we want to know what they mean by respectful language, we can go to the description of the respectful indicator. The description is going to be on page 21, and they go into much more depth about each of these indicators when you go to the high level description. So if you really want to know what they're looking for when it's done well, go to the high description page. And for this dimension, it happens to be on page 21, and it's the third paragraph. It says teachers use a calm tone, respectful language, and gentle touch when moving or holding infants. They consistently verbally prepare the infant for what is about to happen, and they use respectful language and refer to the infants using their names. So respectful language is talked about at the end of the paragraph. They regularly use infants' names and language that communicates respect, such as please or thank you. And so just, the kinds of things that you would say when you're respecting someone is, using their names rather than using pet names or buddy or things like that. What other behaviors did you see from any of the indicators on the face page? We have relational behaviors, emotional expression, and also lack of adult negativity. Did you see some of those behaviors as well?
Good eye contact, right? Strong eye contact.
Mm-hmm. Lots of eye contact, right?
She
Face
was
to
showing
face.
emotion. while
Say
talking
that,
to the baby.
Kathy, say that again.
She was showing emotion while talking to the baby, smiling and
Yes, enthusiasm and smiling. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Joint attention. Again, joint attention is, I'd like you to read or take a look at the high description for relational behaviors, which is that first paragraph. It says, teachers and infants show clear evidence that they enjoy being with one another. And teachers are often in physical proximity to infants, sitting next to them at their level. Teachers often touch, hug, or pat infants and make comments such as, I'm so glad you're here, or we're so happy to see you. And throughout the interactions, they regularly look at infants, are on their level, join in their activities, and share verbal and physical affection. So when you learn this tool, and it does take a long time, a lot of study to really learn which behaviors go with these different indicators. But when you get trained to reliability on this tool, you actually learn how to recognize quickly which behaviors are done and when they're done frequently. And in order to score at a high level, to score a 7 or a 6 on this tool, you have to demonstrate these behaviors frequently and consistently. And so you look over a 15-minute observation window, and across the 15 minutes, you have to judge how frequent was it. When I saw her smile and laugh, was that all the time? Was that with everybody, or was that just some of the time? And if it was only with some of the babies, and other babies, did not get that connection, then we have a mid-level score. And so what we're looking for in all these dimensions is frequent examples and examples of these behaviors happening consistently. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to the dimension of teacher sensitivity. We've talked a lot about sensitivity already, but the definition of that dimension is that it looks at the teacher's awareness and responsiveness to the infant's verbal and nonverbal cues, including availability to provide comfort, skill in resolving distress, and timeliness of their responses and contingency of their responses. So it's what we talked about when we were talking about cue detection, being aware and responsive and responding quickly and effectively. The face page for teacher sensitivity is on page 22. And you can see there that there are 3 indicators. They're basically 3 indicators. You mentioned all of these already. So I think you're really good at identifying what this one is about. This is about being aware, being tuned in, being attuned, and paying attention to what babies are saying with their bodies and with their cries, etc. And then interestingly, the last indicator is something you guys also mentioned. When babies are attended to sensitively, they're comfortable, right? They're using the caregiver as a secure base. And so in this dimension, not only are we looking at what the teacher is doing to be sensitive, we're looking at what the baby is doing in response to that. And in the classroom that Ms. Sandifer was mentioning earlier, where the teacher knew everybody and was connected so well, those babies used her as a secure base. They were comfortable. They came up to the teacher when they needed something, and then they ventured off, like you said, and they were comfortable exploring their environment. And that's a clear sign of a sensitive caregiver. So even if you did not get a chance to observe a teacher actively meeting somebody's needs, because maybe while you were observing, she was just sitting in a rocking chair feeding a baby, but everybody else was happy in the room and they were content and they were happy and they were looking at her and coming up to her from time to time, that would give you a pretty clear indication, wouldn't it? That those children are used to being attended to. They're used to having their needs met, and that teacher is sensitive with them. What you would see if they weren't is they'd be a lot more crying, a lot more distress, a lot more fussing, right? And they might even stay away from the teacher and not come up to her that much, right? They might keep their distance. So we do see the comfort level coming out when there's a sensitive teacher. Let's see an example of a sensitive teacher in this video, and keep your face page open so you can be looking for these behaviors. Okay.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, you bumped your head. Hey, you okay? It scared you, I know. Paul's gonna come and say hi to you. It's okay. I know you love Miss You love Miss Paula. She's your favorite. You can go see her? She's got to wash her hands, babe. And then she'll come and talk to you. Who's this? It's Mr. Evie. You say hi. Oh, you didn't give it kisses? Oh, I love the Evie.
All right. So which of those teacher sensitivity behaviors did you see? If you look at the face page again, we have awareness and cue detection. And under that, there's the behaviors are visually scanning, attending to the child physically, and acknowledging or verbally or physically acknowledging the child. Did you see those? Absolutely. With the teacher on the floor, the main teacher that we were watching, she did all of those, right? She was watching what they were doing, and then she was acknowledging them throughout, watching for their cues. Did she respond to them consistently? And it also says, did she adjust her actions based on the individual needs of the babies? So when different babies, different needs came up, did she adjust her responses? With the description on the high level, which is again the best description of what we'd be looking for, it says teachers respond to infants' needs in a timely manner. Teachers regularly shift response styles in ways that are consistent with the different needs of the different babies. And a little farther down, it says, if an infant is having difficulty, teachers respond in a soothing, understanding, and individualized way. What did you notice about the way she responded? Anything in particular? What did you notice about the babies and their comfort level with her or the other teacher? Kathy?
She was definitely calm during the whole situation, so it didn't draw attention to what occurred.
So she immediately responded if a baby cried and what they needed, comfort, provided that comfort. And then when the other teacher came in, what did you see happen then? That fits within this dimension. Under the indicator of infant comfort, did you notice how when the second teacher came in, they all wanted to follow her? They all wanted to come to her. That's an indication that they have that attachment and that they are used to having her respond to them in a sensitive, loving way, right? So immediately they clamored to her. And thirdly, infants soothed or calmed by the baby that hurt himself or herself on the cupboard was immediately calmed fairly quickly, right? One thing you do see, and I think in the video that I showed with the male caregiver, we saw babies who were in distress and they didn't calm quickly, right? The baby, especially the baby that went down for nap, was crying the whole time. And the baby on the floor was crying kind of off and on and didn't calm quickly. That's an indication that their needs are not being met fully, right? That's an indication that something is off and they're not fully happy. And so even though teachers will say it just gets busy and everybody is hungry, everybody wants something at the same time, and I can't be everywhere. The level of crying is an indication that we look at. And so we see to whatever degree they possibly can, that they are attending to babies in a sensitive way and that they're attempting to calm them. And usually over the period of days and weeks and months, when babies get used to getting their needs met, they just don't cry as much. We know that, right? They just get content more quickly. All right, so crying definitely falls within the sensitivity dimension, and that's where we will judge. If we see a lot of crying, that's where we will judge, is there enough sensitivity going on? All right, the third dimension is facilitated exploration, this is a fun one because it gets at helping babies to learn through their active exploration of the world. So it considers teachers' facilitation of experiences and interactions in routine care and playtime to support their infants' engagement and development. Teachers provide effective facilitated exploration when they're involved with babies on the floor, when they're involved in babies' experiences, they're infant focused, and they're providing opportunities for the babies to safely explore and learn from their environment. So if you look at the indicator, the dimension face page on page 26, you will see that the three indicators that we're looking for, the three types of behaviors, are involvement by the teacher, infant focused, meaning the teacher is really focused on what the babies are doing and supporting that exploration. And then lastly, we're looking for teachers that expand what the babies are doing and encourage them to do more. And then encourage them to do the next thing. You know, if they can shake the rattle, if they can pick up the rattle, can they also shake it? You know, if they can crawl over to something, can they then pull themselves up? And so the teacher that's aware and focused on the baby's learning is facilitating those next steps, so to speak. Facilitated exploration occurs throughout the day within the routine care of the babies. So the teachers expand on infants' experiences during diaper changes. They can expand on experiences during meal times. You know, if you've got a baby who's being fed with a spoon and the baby reaches for the spoon, that's an indication that maybe they might want to grab it. They could possibly grab it. So a teacher facilitates that by helping the child bring the spoon to their own mouth. Whatever the baby is showing that they want to do, the teacher is facilitating the child's ability to do that. Let's see. Let me show you a quick example of facilitated exploration. This is called supporting exploration while playing with a puzzle. We're looking for involvement and infant focused and expanding experience. You're gonna make the noise? Hey, you're doing it. Johnny, we're making noises. Okay. So did you see a teacher who was involved, joining in experiences and mirroring the behaviors? 100%, right? We saw the whole time she was doing that. Did we see a teacher who was infant focused? Yes. How was she focused? How could you tell she was infant focused? What were the behaviors you saw that told you she was really focused on that baby? As compared to maybe somebody who was just kind of phoning it in. You know what I mean?
I mean, she was definitely intentional and not fake and really caring. She showed a lot of sensitivity and caring and really attuned.
And so she was focused looking at the baby the whole time, right? I mean, if I could go back and just look at her look as the baby tries something. Watch where her eyes are. I mean, she once in a while she checks on the baby she's feeding, but this whole moment, this whole minute to minute interaction, she's really focused on what is that little Johnny doing with the puzzle piece and watching what he's able to do. And so in order to be able to facilitate his exploration, she has to focus on him. And that's what this second indicator is about. And following his lead is really important, meaning you don't do it to them, you watch what they want to do, and then you follow their lead, right? So she's hanging back to a certain degree too. And then lastly, expanding on the baby's experience. Did you see, how do you think she expanded on the baby's experience? She saw him trying to touch the puzzle piece to the puzzle, right? Kathy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so at first she tried having him like move the puzzle piece side to side around and noticed that he wasn't doing that. So then she went back to him like making the sound of the puzzle.
Tapping it. Yeah. She followed his lead for tapping. And then she made the sound again to see if he would do it again, right? And so she was facilitating him. And then at the end, she said, we're making noise, aren't we? And so she really was intent upon getting him to do that behavior. It's a very subtle thing. And these are very minute behaviors, but we want teachers to be focused in, and it's lovely when we see teachers who are focused enough on the moment to moment interactions that care about what is this child doing developmentally, It's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal to be able to hold a puzzle piece and tap it on and make a noise. He couldn't do that 2 months ago, right? And so the teacher is tuned into the fact that this is a new skill for him. And it seems minute, but this is what infant care is. It's really paying attention to these minute abilities and developmental changes.
Sarah, you have 15 minutes.
Okay. All right. I'm going into the last dimension, and we're going to get time to talk about all of these in more detail next week as well. So if you have questions about any of these, what I would love for you to do is, in your copious amounts of free time between now and next week, if you could scan this manual, that would be wonderful. If you could just take a look, the key things to look at are the face pages and the high level descriptions. Okay. If you only have 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, just browse those face pages and the high level descriptions, because those are the defining pages that define this tool. Okay. They tell us what, and each of these indicators is going to look different in a different moment. So expanding on a child's experience when he's tapping a puzzle piece to a puzzle is, it looks one way. Expanding on a child's experience when he's rolling a ball, or when he's trying to pull up, or he looks like he wants to pull up, is going to be a different behavior, but it's still expanding their experience. So we have to be able to identify what we're seeing. And so the more you can do to get to know these indicators, the more you'll see them happening. And it gets to be actually quite rewarding when you do see them happening. Okay, so the last dimension is early language support. And somebody tell me, at what age do you think adults can have conversations with babies, with kids? At what age can we have conversations with them?
At birth.
Oh, Becky, be quiet. I'm looking for other people.
I can't contain myself.
At any age, right? At birth, whenever they're looking at us and we're looking at them, we can have a conversation. We may not hear them say words yet, but they're giving cues, right? And so we're responding to their cues. And I love having conversations with babies, especially when they are giving off little sounds like coos and squeals and grunts and stuff, because they're trying to express themselves, and we are going back and forth with them as if it was a real conversation. So what we're looking for language support, this dimension captures the amount and the effectiveness of teachers' language stimulation and language facilitation. techniques and encourages encourage infants' early language development. So on page 30 is the face page, and you will see that the 3 indicators for this dimension are teacher talk, communication support, which is how do we get kids to make sounds? How do we support them in making sounds? And then communication extension, which is about, you know, how do we extend what we hear them say and start helping them to make sense of of sounds. So if you look under, if you look under teachers talk, the behaviors specifically are self-talk, which is describing what I'm doing as I'm doing it, describing classroom events, verbally, like describing a classroom event like, oh, Miss Jackson just came in. You just saw her come in. You like Miss Jackson. Yeah, she's going to wash her hands and then she's going to come talk to you. That's describing a classroom event, right? Verbally labeling objects while you're playing together, using complete and varied sentences. So it's actually talking, you know, we want to see a lot of talking with babies. And a lot of teachers think that because babies can't talk, they forget to talk to them. And so we need to get that across to them that they're hearing your language throughout the day. They need to hear your language as you interact. Okay, the second one is communication support, which is initiating sounds or words. Teachers frequently encourage infants to verbalize. So you hear any little sound come out, you're like, oh, what sound is that? You know, ooh, ooh, and you're imitating what they're doing. You're imitating or repeating sounds. So this is about talking to kids and talk that's directed to them, getting them to make those sounds. And then the final one is, if you have a conversation with a baby, you're providing words for them, right? You're saying, oh, do you like that? Or what are you trying to say? You know, you want the rattle? Okay, well, you're going to shake it? Okay, so you're having this conversation, giving them the words. And then you're modeling turn taking. All right, let me show you a quick video on language, supporting communication. This is called Supporting Communication at the Mirror. And let's get that one going here. I mean, it's pretty obvious what you're going to see, but.
What you doing? See Ryan laughing at himself. He thought that was funny. Oh, what? What do you see up there? Do you see the star? Do you see the star? Do you hear me? Hey, you need Ryan. Let's get Ryan. Look at Ryan. He's laughing and singing. Are you starting, buddy? Can you do that? I've heard you talk. There he goes. He's checking. Looking at the flowers.
Okay, so which of those indicators would you say we saw most in that video? Did you see teacher talk in that video? She was doing a little talking. in terms of the baby that was at the mirror, she was doing a lot of the second one, communication support. So she was getting him to make sounds by imitating the sounds that he made. And we're looking for, you know, either initiating the sound, you know, can you say ba, 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 ba? Or if you hear the child making the sound, imitating it so they do it more. And then saw a little bit of turn taking, a little bit of going back and forth with the baby on the floor. This video teacher talk during applesauce feeding, I think you see a lot more back and forth, and you see a lot more teacher talk. There's 3 teachers in this. Just focus on the one in pink for now.
Want some help? Oh, there you go. That's good. Applesauce.
Labeling.
Cold this morning, isn't it? It was warm yesterday, but today we took it out of the fridge. Now it's cold. For feeding applesauce? No, for Ethan. He does well with that. Steven, how's it going there? Let's put one on a spoon, and then Steven can have a bite, and Jason, here's a bite for you. Applesauce. I know you like it. Mama says you love applesauce.
Oops, sorry about that. I lost it at the end. But you should have seen, in which indicator did you see a lot of in that one? The first one's teacher talk. The second one is supporting sounds they make. And the third one's extending.
Page 30 of your books.
Yeah, sorry about that. You have to be able to break these down and kind of identify which indicator was present. It's easy to see how it can all get mixed up into one and say, yeah, they're doing a lot of language. But when we want to look at specific indicators, ultimately the way the tool is scored is you look at every single indicator individually, and we assess whether each indicator is happening or not, and to what degree it's happening. So you may get a teacher that's doing a lot of talking, but not a lot of expanding, or a teacher that's doing, you know, a lot of initiating, like ba, 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 da, da, and imitating, but they're not doing a lot of complete sentences and actually talking to babies in conversational ways. And so they might be making a lot of noise, but they're not doing the full picture. And so all of the indicators matter in this tool. And ultimately, we want to see consistently, you know, high levels of all of them in order to score well. A lot of times you do see a mixture of high, mid, and low indicators. And so you get kind of a mid-level average score.
Sarah, I
What were you
posted
gonna
in the chat the serve and return video from Harvard to help with that back and forth, just making that connection. I think
Great
sometimes
one.
helps with that. And we have just about 3 minutes left.
All right, now what I wanted to show you this chart to just show you that most class scores for infant classrooms are falling in the moderately effective or the mid-range, okay? When you average things out and you look at classrooms all over the country for infant care, we're scoring in the mid ranges. And so for this domain of responsive, for all 4 dimensions. So there's a lot of room to grow. Even though these are all simple things, they're really simple to recognize and simple to talk about. We're not seeing them necessarily at high levels. And so, you know, maybe you get 1 classroom out of 4 that's doing it at a high level, and the rest of them are just doing it somewhat. And then once in a while you do get some that are doing really poorly. But averaging it out across the dimensions, we're seeing moderately effective. And we do know that we need to see highly effective interactions to really close that achievement gap. That's one thing the study after study has shown. We're not closing the achievement gap until we get to these 5, 6, and 7 scores. And so we're going to talk more next week about the different tools that you have and how you can use this. But I'd just like to open, before we end, are there any pressing questions, any urgent questions? Again, next week we'll talk more about what scoring looks like and, you know, sort of how you use this. But mainly, I just wanted to give you an overview of what's in it to start with. So any pressing questions before we go? I would love for you to be able to, like I said, browse through the manual or the dimensions guide this week. If you only have time to look at the dimensions guide, that's a quick overview. And compare that to what you're seeing in your classrooms. And then when we come back next week, we're going to go through the toddler level, and there are a few more dimensions in the toddler level. So we're going more quickly into the actual dimensions next week. And then we'll wrap it all up at the end and hopefully answer any questions you have. So write down your questions if you come up with any questions or if you don't understand anything, but I really appreciate your attention and thanks for attending, for having this.
So I'll send the Zoom link again to you all for next week, same time, 12:30 to 2:30 on Thursday. If something comes up, then we can reschedule that you would watch the recording. So just let me know, reach out. I can't thank you enough for your participation. If you get a chance just to breeze through the tool, I know it's a lot to take in. It's quite a comprehensive tool. So if you just did look at the dimensions guide, I think that it would help to make that connection. I've posted the video for the serve and return video from Harvard. It just kind of helps make that help with the lens. I think I always thought it helped with the lens. And when you start to go in those classrooms and look for that infant and seeing that feedback and that serve and return. Okay. Reach out. You have our emails. Thank you again for your participation. I appreciate it so much. And we are so looking forward to this next step in the process. And most importantly, have a wonderful day.
And I hope everybody napped today while you were having your meeting.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
They recharge themselves, right? They're ready to roll for you this afternoon.
Have a good week.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe. Take care, everybody. Looks like